Hello and welcome to English 3, Chapter 1, Lesson 1. Today we're talking about advertisements in multimedia, and what they mean by that. Multimedia means multiple media, and media is the plural of medium, meaning the way something is conveyed to you. So it could be through print, it could be through radio, it could be through TV. The multimedia means that we're talking about advertisements that go through a bunch of different channels to get to you. And the goal of this is to see sort of behind the scenes a little bit of what media is trying to get you to do and understand the techniques they use to convince you to buy things. So they have these two commercials here. Or is that just one commercial? Hilltop Remastered. I don't really want to watch it because I like to skip commercials, not watch them on purpose. But it's a Coke commercial, so you know that it's gonna be really visually over the top and like really cool looking, and then at the end it's gonna be like, hey, drink Coca-Cola because it's the real thing. What the focus of this is going to be to distill claims, to find inside an advertisement claims. So here's a 60s Chevron advertisement. Chevron being, like a auto shop. Today you can get this auto seat belt for $5.95 each at most Chevron stations, installed for free. Why? Simply because Chevron believes that seatbelts belong in your car and in every car. Yeah, not all cars used to have seatbelts. Seatbelts were an invention that came long after the car was invented. And then it became nationally mandatory to put seatbelts in cars, so people who had cars that didn't have seatbelts had to bring their car in to get a seatbelt installed. Is this a good deal? Yes, it is. Many have paid $12.95 for this same belt plus installation. So these three claims they picked out specifically because they show us the three different kinds of rhetoric. Right here, rhetoric. What is rhetoric? Rhetoric is the way you say stuff. Anytime you're making a presentation, there's two things you've got going. You've got the substance and the rhetoric. The substance is what you're actually saying. Here, the substance is we've got a seatbelt for $5.95 plus free installation. That's it. But they got to dress it up and convince you that that's the best thing, that you got to come to them. You can't go to somebody else. You got to come to them. So the substance is what they're offering. The rhetoric is how they're offering it. The what and the how. So the three forms of rhetoric they focus on here are pathos, ethos, and logos. Pathos is the root word for empathy and sympathy. So it deals with feelings, emotions. The content appeals to emotions of the viewer. For example, an animal shelter commercial might try to make you cry. Ethos is ethics, right? Just that ETH, ethics. The content is designed to rely on the credibility of the speaker, the ethical background of the speaker. Any commercial that uses a celebrity endorsement is relying on ethos, because they're like borrowing the reputation of that person. Logos is logic. This content appeals to your logic. Any advertising that offers facts, research, or studies in attempting to appeal to your logical mind. When they say that this car performed the best in safety standards, they're using logos. When they say it was awarded the National Highway Safety Administration award 3 years in a row, that's ethos. And when they show a guy driving down like hairpin turns in the countryside, they're like, this is what it feels like to drive this car. That's pathos. Excuse me. Okay, so the 3 claims that came from that Chevron ad. Today, you can get this seatbelt for $5.95. Specific data regarding costs. Let's see. This makes people feel like they're getting something for nothing. It is an appeal to logos. The logic of it. They're wanting you to make a connection between 2 things. So they're wanting you to use your logic. And said, well, if that's true, then this is the best deal, and I've got to take it. Simply because Chevron believes that seatbelts belong. That's pathos. Seatbelts save lives. Seatbelts belong in your car. By pointing out that seatbelts save lives and that Chevron believes that seatbelts belong in each car, the company is appealing to the emotions of the viewer. Right? If you feel it in your heart, then they're trying to get at your pathos. Is this a good deal? Yes, it is. This again appeals to logic. Oh, okay, so I guess they didn't do all 3. They just did logic twice and pathos once. Is there an ethos in there? Yeah, not really. Okay, now let's look at this Lincoln Motor advertisement. The Lincoln owner never feels called upon to explain that his car is of any particular series or model. For a Lincoln is a Lincoln, the world over. Concentration of the entire Lincoln organization upon the development of one chassis with everybody built to Lincoln's unyielding standards under strict factory supervision has resulted in absolute standardization of Lincoln quality. Improvements are incorporated whenever possible, and with the thought of making them adaptable to cars in use. The latest improvement, a 6-brake system, is now standard on Lincoln cars. What are the claims? Well, the first claim is this. I drive a Nissan. Well, what kind of Nissan? A Maxima, a Sentra? It's like, no, just a Nissan. He's saying, or this ad is saying, that a Lincoln is a Lincoln. It doesn't matter what subtype of Lincoln you have. It's like, oh man, that's fancy. Right here. Lincolns are so famous around the world that they don't need to be identified by model. In this sentence, emphasis is on the company, not a particular product. Focus is on brand recognition. This is an appeal to pathos. An emotional appeal to the status of the brand. Yeah. Don't you feel fancy driving a Lincoln? Lincoln has extremely rigorous standards that ensure excellent quality. That's what logos. This is an appeal to logos. Yeah. The implication is that it would be only rational to purchase a car from a company that values excellence. And then finally, is this one ethos? Just because it's the last one left. Lincoln cars are constantly improved. Is that logic again? Let's see. Thus, it's only logical to purchase a car from a company that wants to keep making its products better. Yeah, that was logic twice. Tone. Tone is the style of your voice, and it can come across in just writing, but for like a Lincoln commercial, they would use this regal tone, this like kingly, queenly, like we are very fancy and we are above it all and we know fancy things, so that you will think it's something special. For a cheaper car like a Nissan, then they'd use like a conversational tone, like oh man, isn't this car great? Just look at this car. This is a good car, and they try to meet you where you're at rather than act fancy. Print ads use tone to convey their claims and persuade readers, as do other kinds of argumentative writing. And a commercial tone is conveyed in the actors' and narrators' words, in the music used, and in all the visual elements. Watch this commercial for a Westinghouse refrigerator. No thank you. What words are used, and what tone do these words convey? Okay, words. Old-fashioned, frost up, nuisance, messy, chores. As the commercial begins, a critical tone is established. Words such as old-fashioned and nuisance criticize their current refrigerators. Sensational, magical, immediately, frost-free. So that's the tone of the thing they're trying to sell you. this new refrigerator that doesn't have any of the problems of old refrigerators and is much, much better. Test it and prove it, just like yours. I'm sure. See, why did they pull out this one? I'm sure. Because that I'm right there says, oh, this guy's willing to lay his reputation on the line to sell me this thing. And especially back then, reputation mattered. If somebody's willing to put their own stamp of approval on it, then that's ethos. You can be sure. Direct appeal to the listener, proven under all conditions. And that's probably the logos right there. Makes you think that it's supported through science. Probably isn't, but it makes you think it is. Okay, so just real quick, let's go back over the three types. Pathos. Think pathos, empathy, emotion. Ethos, ethics, credibility. They're borrowing the credibility of the speaker. Logos is logic, so they're asking you to make a connection between two things and come to a logical conclusion. Oh, I know. The guy from Dirty Jobs, right? You ever see the Ford commercials where he's is it called Dirty Jobs? Yeah, Dirty Jobs Ford commercial. Mike Rowe, yeah. Yeah, they're relying on you to trust him and say that, he wouldn't endorse Ford if he didn't really think that Ford was a good truck. And so they're using his reputation to sell the truck. Yeah, there we go. That's a good example. Logical fallacies. That is the next bit is there are a lot of logical fallacies, at least a dozen. But the ones they are worried about now are ones that are really common in commercials. So you got hasty generalization, making a claim based on insufficient evidence. So hasty generalization, you watch the first 5 minutes of a movie and decide it's a crappy movie. That's hasty, right? It's too fast. Ad populum, an appeal to pathos that uses abstract ideas such as patriotism, democracy, or terrorism, rather than ideas related to a real topic. So that's like the commercial with the American flag waving, and it's like, real Americans eat beef. And then you're just like, I guess I have to eat beef, or I'm not a real American. Building a straw man. This one might be a little hard to understand. Oversimplifying an opposing argument or viewpoint. So that's like, say you and I are arguing, and some third person comes in and they say, hey, what are you guys arguing about? And I say, well, this guy right here thinks that all war is good and we should always be at war. And he's like, that is not what I said. He was like, I was saying some war is justified. And I say, see, he says all wars. I'm creating a version of his argument that's easier to defeat than his actual argument. I'm ignoring what he's saying and creating a straw man. I'm creating like a scarecrow that looks like him, but it's easier to burn down. I hope that made sense. Okay. Let's look at this next thing, outlining an essay. Is it loading? It's not loading. There we go. Now that you've analyzed commercials and techniques of persuasive writing, you can explain these techniques in your own writing. Before you begin writing, it's important to organize your thoughts. You're not going to have to write an essay for this one. This one is a test. But it's good to think in terms of writing, because the more you think about it, the better you get, so that when you do get to the essay, it's that much easier and you write that much better. Okay, an attention-grabbing hook is a statement that captures readers' interest and makes them want to keep reading. So that's like a a really punchy sentence where you're like, if you've ever driven a car before, then you know that some cars are terrible and some cars are good. Well, let me tell you about the best car you'll ever drive, a Lincoln. And then somebody's like, oh, the best car? That's a big claim. Let me check that out. A thesis statement describes what the entire paper is about. That's the central argument, the whole point of it. Supporting evidence is the stuff you use to back up your point. You can't just say something and then trust the audience or expect the audience to trust you. So let's say we're going with this Lincoln thing. Let's say your paper is a whole newspaper ad for a Lincoln car, and your thesis statement is Lincolns are the best value for your dollar and the most reliable car you can drive. And your supporting evidence is just you repeating that over and over again. A lot of people are going to see through that. They're not going to buy it. So your supporting evidence has to be something about the price of the car, how it retains its value, how it may be expensive, but it's because it's all quality stuff, and it's drives the best, it's the safest, all those things. Analysis is the logical movement from the supporting evidence to the thesis statement. You're going to explain why the evidence you used is important and why it supports your ideas. You can't just lay your ideas down on the floor and say, look, there they are. You have to, pick them up, hold them up in front of your face, and explain why this idea works. Here's the basic outline. You got your introduction paragraph. It's got a hook. It's got a topic. It's got a thesis statement. Body 1, body 2, they've only got 2 body paragraphs here. Similarities and differences. Similarities and differences between what? I guess this is just a comparing, contrast essay. And then the conclusion paragraph. So this follows a system where we sum it up with the phrase, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've just told them. It's repetitive, but it's repetitive on purpose. It's supposed to really drive your point home. If I tell you the Lincoln is the best car to drive, and then I'm going to tell you today that the Lincoln is the best car to drive. Lincoln is the best car to drive because of this, and because of this. So now you see that the Lincoln is the best car to drive. By the end of it, you're like, yeah, man, I really want to buy a Lincoln. Side note, my grandma had a Lincoln Town Car, and it was a really good car. Had electric windows in the 80s. It was really cool. Exercise outline. Let's just look at the flashcards and we'll be done. Claims are central ideas that are not proven that you have to prove. Advertisers' arguments about a product. Rhetoric. The way you present your argument. Language designed to have a persuasive effect. Pathos, that's the emotion. Ethos, that's the reputation, authority of the speaker. Logos, that's logic. Logical fallacy is a badly phrased argument, an error in an argument's logic that underlines its validity. A hook is an attention-grabbing sentence at the beginning of your essay. A thesis statement is the central idea, central argument in a written work. Supporting evidence is the research you bring to the table to prove that what you're saying is true. And analysis is the movement from the process of examining evidence to show how it proves the central idea in a written work. All right, there we go. That was 1.1. I'll meet you in 1.2.